Welcome to another episode of Stuck in My Mind podcast. I am your host, WIZE, and today I'm going to be joined by a former U.S. Marine, an electrical engineer, a mobile phone designer. I'm just excited for him to come share his story because he has an amazing story. Welcome to the show, Craig Andrews.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, yeah, this has been in the works since December.
Yeah.
But thank you for being a guest. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me, and let's just jump right into it.
All right.
All right. So can you share with us your journey from being a U.S. Marine and an electrical engineer to becoming a successful marketer and author?
Yeah. So first off, nobody ever accused me of being a model student in high school, and so I was mostly being self-destructive, and so it was time for me to do a change. And I had a really good recruiter, first great salesperson I met. I went in hoping to sign up for 3 years. He signed me up for 6, and it was 6 wonderful years. I loved my time in the Marine Corps, but at the same time, I planned to be in there for that amount of time and then get out and move on. And the one thing I knew about myself was I liked to create things. I wanted to be creative. And so when I looked around at careers, I realized, okay, I'm kind of good at math and engineers create things. So I'll go to engineering school, and did that, got even a master's degree in electrical engineering, and had a really cool job. I was designing mobile phones in the 1990s when they were new. And so it was a really cool job, but I wasn't happy. I mean, I was doing well, I was getting promotions, all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't happy. And I realized that engineering is not a place where they reward creativity. And so I was kind of starving, and I kind of stepped back and said, okay, here I am. What should I do with what I have? And so I started marketing semiconductors for mobile phones and did really well in that. It allowed me a lot more opportunity to be creative. Still was able to tie in my, kind of my tech background. And so I got to go into some of the biggest mobile phone makers in the world. I've, been Nokia, Samsung, Ericsson back when they were still making phones, Motorola back when they still made phones, LG when they still made phones, Apple, and so I've been in the offices of the world's largest mobile phone makers, and it was a blast. It was absolutely loads of fun, very competitive. And one of the things that people don't think about when you're selling to somebody like one of these top makers, Nokia at their peak, this is back when I was in, Nokia was making 1 million phones a day. Every single day, 1 million phones were moving down the production line. Now imagine if you make a mistake, something goes wrong, and visualize 1 million phones going down and piling up in the biggest trash heap you've ever seen. So small mistakes have big implications in that world. And so to be able to sell into it, you have to be able to build a lot of trust. And so that's where I started laying kind of the groundwork for how to build trust. Well, a trend that I saw, the price pressures to bring, I know from your perspective, phones have gotten more expensive than they were 10 years ago. But that's because they're just putting so much in there. From the supplier standpoint, the margin compression was insane. And I knew the day was coming when they would ask me to fly coach to Asia. And I'd predetermined when that day comes, I'm out. I'm done. I'm not going to fly coach to Asia. I was going there 4 or 5 times a year. And I was like, it's not worth it. And so sure enough, that day came. And so I launched off and launched my own gig. And it was funny. I'd been very successful. I'd driven over $500 million of revenue in that world. And I thought, oh, well, I'll go shower the rest of the world with my wisdom. And it was kind of a wake up call to me. And when I run across my buddies in that world and they ask me what I've been doing, I said, I've spent over a decade learning how little I know about marketing. Because it turns out that the marketing in that high tech with these companies that have huge budgets, the marketing is not world class. It's not even what I would say good. It's a lot of the marketing is, hey, we have a part, you have a need, here's our part. But there's so many tools that are underutilized in that world, and they believe that the battle is won on price and the battle is won on their data sheet. I would say there are elements of truth there, but that's not the whole truth. And so it's been an interesting journey as I've left that and learned a ton. And somebody who passed away recently, a guy named Daniel Kahneman, so much of what I do on a day-to-day basis is based off the work that he did. And if you've ever heard of the book Thinking Fast and Slow, that was written by him. He and his partner in 1972 laid the groundwork for cognitive biases that drive our decisions. And in 79, he and his partner Amos Tversky, I can't say the guy's name, it's too many consonants, but Tversky or something like that, they published prospect theory. And it really changed the way that we approach sales and marketing. And that's the thing that I think the tech world, a lot of that stuff is the stuff the tech world's missing, because the tech world's stuck in this mindset that people are rational and that they make purchasing decisions based on rationality. And, what we know from behavioral economics, nah, that's not true. There are other things that drive purchase decisions.
Yeah. So what inspired you to start Allies for Me, and how has your experience in various fields influenced your approach to marketing?
Yeah, so the name Allies for Me, it's rooted in this basic belief that everybody needs an ally. Steve Jobs, probably the most naturally talented marketer of my lifetime. You know what? He hired marketing agencies. He reached out and he pulled in other people because he knew that where he wanted to take Apple required allies to get him there. And so that's kind of the thought behind the name is, when we partner with a company, what we're trying to do is help them achieve some things that they've been unable to achieve on their own. And a lot of times it's just a matter of stepping back and looking at their problem through an outside lens. Earlier I was talking to somebody, and this is a guy who's just starting up his business, and we were just chatting. And I said, I don't see your website. He's like, yeah, it's not, it's not right. We've got some problems there. And I said, well, do you have content there? He said, yeah. I said, well, what do you think the greatest harm is? That somebody may go to your website and read something that's not worded as optimally as you like it? Or is the greater harm that somebody would go to your website and find nothing?
Mm.
And in that moment, when you and I talk about it, we know the answer, obviously, but he was caught in his own head with this problem of, hey, what's on my website's horrible. I'm just going to take it down. And so I get that. I'm not criticizing him, but that's the advantage of having somebody come in from the outside. And that's what we do for folks that have, folks we work with tend to have high ticket services with long sales cycles that require a lot of trust to close. And we just partner with them. And so that was kind of the inspiration.
I learned about my website. And my first website was simple, but I still have it up. And then when I redid it and I built it over again, it's way better now. But it took me doing it the first time and not being too satisfied with it. But I didn't take it down. I left it up there because I needed people to access the podcast and all this other stuff. But the new website that I've redone and everything, it's so much better. But it's because I've learned along the way. So yeah, it made more sense to keep even though you weren't happy with he wasn't happy with the content, is better than the link coming up saying this website isn't up or running or whatever it is. So I prefer the people that find the the lower rated content or whatever, because then when I start putting updates, they can see the progress. They can see the growth from where, okay, look at him where he started to where he is now.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite quotes is by General Patton. And he said, a good plan violently executed today beats a perfect plan executed next week. You know, and so the, you know, kind of the lesson there is go out and do something. It doesn't have to be perfect. Go out and do something. Make progress on something. And if it's at least, if that something is good, that's always going to be better than waiting until you have it perfect.
Okay. Could you tell us more about your experience of spending 3 months in a coma in a hospital and 6 weeks? 3 months in a hospital and 6 weeks in a coma. How did that experience shape your perspective on life and business?
Yeah. So that was, it almost shaped my life in that they didn't expect me to live. It was at least a month that the doctors were telling my wife I was going to die. And I got COVID. This was the Delta variant of COVID, which hit in the summer of 2021. And I went in the hospital on August 10th, 2021. Woke up sick July 31st. My wife and I both woke up sick same time. And 11 days later, she was getting better and I was getting worse. And I was having problems breathing. And so I went in, they put me on oxygen, and I was doing pretty well for 11 days. And on the 11th day, in the evening of the 11th day, they said, hey, we're going to give you something to help you sleep. Which at the time, oh boy, I wish I could go back and turn back time. That sounded good because sleep had been hard. It turned out that something was they're going to shoot me full of morphine. And morphine suppresses respiration. And so if you have a respiratory disease, that's not always the best thing. And about 6 hours later, they called my wife in the middle of the night, about 12:30 in the morning. And they basically pressured her to put me on the ventilator. And we both knew if I went on the ventilator, I was going to die, because that's what happened to people that went on the ventilator.
Yeah.
And it was lights out for me for 6 weeks. And during those 6 weeks, I had some pretty wild dreams. I use the term dreams because I don't have a better word for it, but think of it as sort of a status halfway between awake and asleep. And the real world came into my dreams, usually distorted. But without a doubt, you know, there was the real world. I've quoted back to my wife things that she said to me when I was in my coma. You know, when we would talk about specific dreams, I would ask her, I was like, were you on my left or on my right? And inevitably, you know, she was on the side in the dream where I thought she was. And it changed. You know, it changed. You know, there was, I remember one time we were talking, I said, hey, when I was in this certain room in the hospital, at this point in the hospital, when you would come and visit, where'd you sit? She said, oh, I sat on the left. And I showed her journal from September 20th, 2021. Said, on this day, September 20th, which side did you come in on? She said, that day I came in on the right. And that's where she showed up in my dream. So almost always she was on my left. That day she was on my right. Later, she'd be on the left. I mean, it moved all over. So the point of all that was reality was slipping through. And what I would tell anybody, if you have a friend that's in a coma, talk to them, you know, talk to them. More makes it through than you realize. But when I woke up 6 weeks later, a little confused about what had been going on. But my body had completely atrophied. I couldn't lift my arms, couldn't lift my legs. And I had to learn how to walk again. Basically, and basically, I discovered, I've had to rebuild my whole muscle system, and it's wild. It's 2 years out, and earlier today, I was out on the deck where my stepson's coming over, and we're going to replace the deck. I went over and I took a cordless drill, and I was just taking screws out of the deck. And doggone, I discovered a part of my body that was weak. That would have been nothing for me 3 years ago to do that. And all of a sudden, this thing just like killed me. And it was muscles I didn't realize. Okay, I haven't rebuilt those muscles yet.
Yeah, it's still time. It takes time. I had a friend once he went on his ventilator, it was a wrap for him. But then I had a coworker of mine who, thank God, they put him on a ventilator and he didn't give up fight. He fought and he fought it and he fought it, and thank God he's here with us today and able to tell his story. But we thought he was a goner once we heard he was on a ventilator, because that's what a lot of people those are the stories you heard when once they put you on the ventilator, it was over.
Yeah, I was actually the first survivor to leave the ICU alive.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's why the doctors were telling my wife I was going to die, was because everybody before me died. Yeah, and so I think it's a miracle that I'm here.
Yeah.
And but it's been an interesting experience.
Okay. All right. So how do you believe the unspoken language of sales impacts the effectiveness of marketing strategies?
Yeah, so that's actually something that ties back to my time in the hospital.
Okay.
Something really interesting happened when I woke up. There had been a dramatic shift in my relationship of trust with people. My trust in the doctors had just plummeted, while my trust in my wife had gone through the roof. And as I was starting to figure that out, try to figure out what happened, the doctors were sending messages the whole time I was out. And the doctors, if you talk to my wife, they said some pretty horrible things, and even around me, when I was there. And, those messages came through, and it changed. When I woke up and the doctors would want to do something, I just tell them no. I didn't fully understand. My brain wasn't fully working, but I was responding instinctively, saying, I can't trust these people. So they would go to my wife and they'd tell her, hey, we want to do this. She'd come to talk to me, and I'd ask her, is it safe? And she said, yeah. And as soon as I heard her say it was safe, I would do it. Well, that whole relationship changed during those 6 weeks I was out. And, when I think about sales, and if you've ever been in a sales conversation, you've probably seen it. Even if you didn't recognize it, if you think about it, you probably saw a point where the posture of whoever you were talking to changed. And the reason for that is, unless you're a sociopath and you're trying to sell, your body language gives you away. Even if you choose the right words, your body language gives you away. And so the more in your heart that you want to sell, the more your body language is working against you. And that's that unspoken language where your prospect sees it. They hear it in your tone of voice, they see it in your posture, and they immediately register, this guy's trying to sell me. And immediately their defenses go up. Just like my defenses went up with the doctors. I didn't trust them. We tend not to trust those that are trying to sell us something.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I found is, at least for me, and I know there's different people have different philosophies, was I need to come up with a sales process, one that works because I need to put food on the table, but I need to come up with a sales process that takes me out of sales mode. And after, it took a lot of experimentation, but I ended up finding one where it hit me. The moment of clarity was, you know what? A fantastic offer a truly irresistible offer can overcome the worst sales presentation. But the best sales presentation can't sell a bad offer.
Mm.
And so what I did was we added something to the front end. We do high ticket stuff and high trust stuff. And so we added something to the front end that wasn't expensive. It had no commitments. It had, it was just removing the risk, but it was stacking an insane amount of value at a stupidly cheap price. And it was such a good offer that I trusted if I put that offer in front of a qualified buyer, they'll say yes. Mm-hmm. And then that set up a little mini project that we would do together. At the end of the mini project, I found the conversation I was having was they would say, "This is great. What do we do next?" And so there it wasn't a sales conversation. It was just more of answering their questions. Well, here's what's next. And so at least for me, getting to a point of not selling was essential for me to be able to sell.
Okay. So what exactly is a first-time offer, and how does it differ from a traditional sales approach?
Yeah. So the first thing is, and again, I'm speaking primarily to people that have a core offer that's 5, 6, 7 figures. People are going to slow down and think through before they spend 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, $1 million. They're going to slow down. They're going to think through that very carefully. Also, if you have a long commitment, people aren't going to want to sign up for a long commitment without slowing down and thinking through it. And so that's some important context. But what a first time offer is it's a impulse purchase. So if your core offer is like 50 grand, your first time offer, I'm not kidding, is $500 for a B2B. For B2C, it's less. $500 because it has to be an impulse purchase. That means the coins on the cushion of your couch or the money in your wallet or the B2B equivalent of that. If anybody has to ask permission to spend that money, it's priced too high. If anybody is ever going to be held accountable for how that money is spent, it's priced too high. So it's an impulse purchase. The next thing is it has to deliver disproportionate value to price. And usually we're aiming for 10x. So if you're selling it for 500, it better be delivering $4,000 or $5,000 of value. And here's the next test. If anybody has to do a mental calculation to figure out if it's a good deal, it's either priced too high or doesn't deliver enough value or both. And the third thing is it has to solve a problem. And you know what? When I tell people about these offers, it's funny. It's predictable. I tell them it has to solve a problem. And audit, doesn't solve a problem. Audit just highlights the problems that are there. No kidding. 30 minutes later, they'll come back and say, you know what? We think our first time offer will be an audit. That's not what's going to work. Or an assessment. Other people use the term assessment. Assessment's just a nice word for an audit. Okay. It has to solve a problem because here's what happens. When you come shoulder to shoulder with somebody in life and you solve a problem in their life, it causes the uncontrolled release of oxytocin in the body. And oxytocin is the bonding hormone that bonds baby to mother. And when you solve a problem in someone's life, it has similar bonding to them. So that's the third thing. Obviously, you want to leave the big problems unsolved because you want them to advance to your core offer. And then that's the last thing is it has to naturally lead to that core offer. So that's kind of the high level framework. There's a few more details under that, but that's the concept.
Okay. So how can marketers use first time offers to build trust with their audience and improve conversion rates?
Yeah, so it's 2 conversion rates. The first one is how many people buy the offer.
Okay.
Now we actually use that as a filter, and our goal is not to maximize that closing rate. When we have the offer right, we find we have about on average, a 50% closing rate on the first time offer. And if it goes higher than that, we actually get worried. Once you go through that, what happens in the process where you're solving a problem with somebody, and another requirement is there has to be workshops as a part of that that first time offer where you're actually going in and working with them, not delivering results, but actually working with them. When you do that, it's a massive trust building exercise. Think about anytime somebody's come in your life and they've helped you solve a problem. It builds a lot of trust.
Yes.
And so that's what these first time offers do, is you just come in, you help them solve problems. It's, in some ways it's really that simple.
Yeah.
Getting the offers right is not simple.
Okay. In your opinion, why do people tend to raise their guard when they detect like a sales pitch or something? And how can marketers overcome that barrier?
It's a impulsive, or it's a natural response. It's a self-protection response. It's something that happens in the back of the brain, and the signals in the back of the brain reach the action-oriented part of the brain 20 milliseconds faster than the signals in the front of the brain.
Okay.
So your frontal cortex, that's where you have logic and reason. The whole thing, left brain, right brain, that's been debunked. It's really system 1, system 2. But the logical, thoughtful part of your brain is your frontal cortex. Well, while you're sitting there thinking through things, the back of your brain is like, nope, we're not doing that. And that's where that guard is raised.
Okay.
And so it's not something you can do with words. This comes back to that unspoken language of sales, where you have to quit selling. It's really that simple. You got to quit selling and just talk to them. And then when it comes time to present the offer, just present the offer. And for me, I found and this is true, I do not care whether they say yes or no. I truly do not care, because I've found that when the offer is right, a qualified buyer will say yes. So that takes me out of sales mode. And when I'm out of sales mode, the things that trigger the back part of their brain saying this guy is trying to sell me, those signals go away, and whoever I'm talking to is a lot more relaxed.
So how do you balance the need to drive sales with the desire to genuinely help people and serve your audience?
Well, the offers are just incredible tools of service.
Yeah.
These offers, you will never feel ethically compromised by offering somebody one of these first time offers. They are insanely good deals that help people solve problems. And so, serving is just kind of baked into the process. We don't make money on these offers. And if you factor in the value of our time, we lose money.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not thinking about that. So I have somebody going through one of our workshops. They're taking longer. They're taking more of our time than normal. But, my perspective is, what? We're serving them. We made a promise. We're going to do, we're going to hit these milestones.
Yeah.
And we're hitting the milestones. And, we'll see if they advance or not. Historically, 80% of the people that buy our first time offer advance to our core offer.
Awesome. What advice would you give to aspiring marketers who are looking to improve their sales tactics and strategies?
So if you're doing high ticket stuff, you should do a first time offer. That's always our first advice. The low ticket stuff, there are different things that you could do that are similar to first time offers, but on the lower ticket stuff, if you do our first time offer, you're gonna end up losing money because of the amount of value that you deliver in the offer. But The thing I would say is recently there's a guy named Daniel Kahneman that died, and he talked about the system 1, system 2 thinking. He wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. A lot of people have heard of it. And my advice would be study his work, read Thinking Fast and Slow, because the biggest thing that I found that really moves the needle for us when we're doing marketing is when we're speaking to the back part of somebody's brain. And I even referred to it as we're actually programming their system 1 thinking. And when we program that correctly, it's just an amazingly winning strategy. And people buy, and, they don't fully understand why. Now they have a need, people always get worried hanging around marketers, or at least some of us, and they're like, are you going to make me bark like a dog? I'm like, no, I can't. If you don't want to bark like a dog, I can't make you bark like a dog. But if you want to bark like a dog, I can influence what type of dog you're going to bark like.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Let me see. What role does authenticity play in building trust and credibility in marketing?
We go through cycles, and the entire cycle is about an 80-year cycle. One of my mentors, a guy named Roy H. Williams, wrote a book called Pendulum. And he talks about how we go through 40 years of a me cycle, followed by 40 years of a we cycle.
Okay.
And the apex of the me cycle is kind of hero worship. And we saw that peak back in 1983. But where we are right now, we peaked in the current we cycle in 2023. And the thing that really works there is authenticity. And we're going to continue in our current we cycle for another 20 years before we start transitioning into the next me cycle. So anybody that's listening to this within, 10 years, 10, 15 years of this recording, authenticity wins in we cycles. But the other thing that you can do, and this is something you can do regardless of where you are in a sales cycle, there's places where you can engineer into a company's persona a weakness, vulnerability, or flaw. And this is counterintuitive. Most people don't want to do that. Even in the peak of authenticity, they're afraid to let people see a weak side.
Okay.
It's actually one of the greatest underutilized superpowers out there, because when you do that and you let people see a weakness, vulnerability, or flaw, it humanizes you and it makes you more trustworthy.
Okay. Awesome. I actually just ordered that book, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes, you spoke high. You speaking of it, I'm like, this is something I got to read. So
yeah. Yeah, it's a great loss, great mind that did that. But when you understand how we make decisions, it will change the way you do marketing.
Okay. So could you share some common mistakes that marketers make when trying to connect with their audience, and how can they avoid them?
So I would, the first thing I would go back to is not showing flaws. I think you have to be, you don't want to, show all your flaws, but you have to be very strategic in what you reveal. Okay. One of the things when we talk about building first time offers, and, here's what happens like all the time, literally 100% of the time. We'll start talking about these offers and people will start saying, oh, I know what I'll build. And the only thing I know, and then they ask me, hey, do you think this would work? And the only thing I know at that point is whatever they come up with on the spot is not going to be the one that works. And one of the reasons, and there's a few reasons why that always fails, but one of the reasons is the biggest barrier that I found that keeps people from reaching an effective first-time offer is their insatiable desire to sell. So if you want to connect, and when we help people build these offers, we go through an exercise where we actually devote 2-3 hours to shifting their mindset from a selling mindset to a serving mindset.
Okay.
And the sooner you can get there, the better the offer you'll build.
Awesome. Awesome. So what motivates you to continue innovating and evolving in your marketing approach, even after facing significant challenges?
It's fun. It's just, different people have different things that get them up in the morning. I love learning new things. I love solving complex problems.
Okay. Awesome. So how do you see the future of marketing evolving, and what trends do you believe will shape the industry in the coming years?
The biggest trend is AI, and this will draw some hate mail, some hateful comments, but I think AI is a little overhyped. I also think it's the biggest thing. I think AI is as big as the internet when that came out.
Mm-hmm.
So here's how I'd reconcile those two beliefs: that it's certainly the biggest thing since the internet was invented, and it's overhyped. People, if you're not using AI on a daily basis and you're a marketer, you've got a very short time frame. You've got a short shelf life. If you're relevant a year from now, I'll be shocked. You've got to pull AI in. It's an amazingly powerful tool.
Mm-hmm.
But where I see the overhyped part of it is people think, they get excited. They're like, hey, I found my new blog writer and it's AI. And and I saw a video yesterday or the day before where they were going through and they're like, hey, look, all you have to do is click here, here, and here, and boom, here's an instant blog for you. And they were showing out how to do this. And they at least were a little more clever. They were like, hey, we have these tools in here that will tie it into your brand voice and it will sound just like you. But what they're missing is, okay, if you're doing that, what do you think your competitors are doing?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
the new noise level is mass quantities of AI generated content. And I just don't think that's going to help you. And there's going to be people who respond, they'll leave it in the comments or what have you, and they're going to just tell me how wrong I am. And maybe so, but I just really don't believe that if you're doing the same thing that all of your competitors are, that you're going to look differentiated. I just don't get that. So the challenge is, how do you harness AI and while maintaining your differentiation? And so I think the answer to that is, AI, when it comes to generating content, AI is more like your graduate student, underpaid graduate student assistant that's doing some research for you and what have you. But you're still adding value in the process. You're still applying thought leadership. If you're hoping that AI is going to go scrape the internet and pull up an answer and sound it at a little bit unique, you're not. And and we've even heard from Google. Google's been given horrible guidance when it comes to AI written content. Initially they're like, yeah, sure, we don't care. And then in August and September of 2023, websites were losing 80% of their traffic.
Wow.
And what happened was they built all that traffic up on AI generated content. And I actually saw a tweet where somebody tweeted to a guy named John Mueller, who's at Google and advises people about how to drive their drive organic traffic to their website. And he said, I don't understand why I've lost all my traffic. And he said, can you show me where you have unique content on your website? And, Mueller already knew the answer to that because he had looked at the guy's website.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is, Google's not ranking it because it's not unique and distinctive. And they've been really confusing. There's some more mixed signals Google has been providing. And so what I would tell people, don't listen to what Google's saying day by day. Listen to what Google was saying 20 years ago, the principles that they were telling you in terms of driving content.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, those principles haven't changed. And if you approach content generation using the principles that have been around for 20 years of Google, then you're going to make yourself, you're not going to be sensitive to the algorithm changes.
Okay. All right. Oh man, Craig, this has been wonderful, wonderful time. Time's flown by. Now is the time of the show where you get the solo screen, you get to plug away the 2 books you got, where people can find you, everything.
Okay. Well, thank you. So this is a book called Make Sales Magical. There's a website, makesalesmagical.com. You can get it on Amazon. Can't buy it on the website. You can learn a little bit more about it on the website, but you can get it at Amazon. And that talks about how to build these first-time offers. A little clarification. This isn't a sales book. This is a marketing book, because when the marketing is done right, the sales are magical. The other book, my wife and I co-authored this. It's titled Hope That Won't Die. And it's about our journey through the hospital. And you actually are there. And that's been some of the feedback that we've gotten on the book. It's you're there with us. And so that's, I really recommend people read that, because the third section of that book is lessons from the journey. And I think there's some lessons that we need to learn from our years during COVID. I hope we learn. And then lastly, if you want to reach out, I'd love to talk to you. You can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Or you can come to my website, which is alliesforme.com. That's spelled ALLIES, the number 4, ME.com. And love to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, man. It's been my pleasure having you on the show. It's amazing to see someone who's at the beginning of COVID, like you said, you got sick, and that's kind of why I wanted you as well on the podcast, because you have an inspirational story. You overcame being in a coma 6 weeks, and to this day you're struggling with certain muscles that you still haven't used, and it's inspiring for people to see that. It's important for people to see that regardless of what has happened and transpired in your life, you get back up and you keep chugging along, and I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation, and I'm looking forward to having you back on soon. I always invite people to come back on. I've had multiple repeat guests, so you're welcome back anytime. If you write a new book or if you have a new program you want to promote, you can definitely come back on, and I'd love to have you back on.
Well, that'd be a delight. Thank you for the invitation. And this is, I really enjoyed the conversation with you.
Thank you, man. I really do appreciate it, man. I have a great time doing this podcast because I get to speak to people like yourself. Because yes, your marketing and all that, but the key is people get to hear your story and get to hear what you've been through, and hopefully they'll go out and get the book, and I'm gonna actually go get your book, the one you and your wife wrote, because I really want to read that. I probably want to read that with my wife, and so yeah, it's amazing to see people who have overcome, especially when we've lived it, when we've seen what COVID has done to so many different people and all that. to see someone who's who is sharing their story and inspiring people to, regardless of what you struggled with in life, you can still keep on battling.
Yep. Absolutely.
But thank you so much, man. Don't leave just yet. Let me close out the show,
All right.
and we'll chat a little bit off the air. And but thank you. This has been wonderful.
It's been wonderful for me. Well, thank you for having me.
Pleasure's all mine. All right, man. Another great show. I am so happy to get this one in the books. This was a real great episode. Please, people, check out his website. Go get the books. It's an inspirational story, definitely, and support. That's what we're here for. We're here to support each other and uplift each other. So shout out to my Real Wise fam, Poppy J, Brandy J, love you guys. Shout out to the boss lady, love you and appreciate you, baby. As always, a big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless y'all. Be safe. Who was out there in the chat today? That's probably Marcus Casman. If it's not, it's probably Corrado. Those are the only two that pop up as Facebook users. If either way, I know one of you guys are going to catch the replay. I greatly appreciate you guys and all the support you guys give me. And peace out, everybody.